Hey, welcome to the channel. It's Jack with Stronghold Strength and Conditioning. And today we're going to be talking about range of motion, what it is, the types of it, and why it matters. But before we get into it, make sure you take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future content like this. Every Thursday, I'm putting out videos showing you how to resolve aches and pains, prevent injuries, and overall optimize your performance, inside the gym and outside of it in your daily life and routine. And it doesn't get much better than that. So take advantage of it. Ready? Let's go ahead and dive into this one. All right, like I said, today we're going to be talking about range of motion, what it is, the different types of it, and why it matters in the first place. So the very first thing that we should start with is, what is range of motion? What does that really mean when we are talking about it? And in our specific case here, we're looking at the range of motion that a joint has been designed with. So each joint is given a specific range of motion and type of movement that it should have. Some joints have a higher degree of movement, like our shoulder and our hip. Some have less degree of movements, like the joints of our toes and fingers, but they add up to make a greater range of motion when you combine all of those joints put together. So that is the very first thing to understand, that our range of motion is the quality and function of our joint specifically. And if that is missing at one joint, it can directly affect the range of motion and stress that another joint takes on. So this is where it's important that we understand how to truly address range of motion and access the range of motion that we've been designed with at all of our joints. Because if one joint is suffering, it has a ripple effect outward from that, where it will affect your range of motion, your flexibility, and your stability around that joint as well. So that is very important to understand. It's a given range of motion, simply put there. Okay? So the next part, what are the types of range of motion that we need to be aware of? Well, there's two types that we really need to focus on, and they're both very important in their own right. So the first one we really want to have, and that is a greater range of motion overall, will be our passive range of motion. So our passive range of motion is the range of motion that we can take the joint through in a passive manner by having something actually force the joint into its deepest end range. So that is important to note right there. We are taking that joint through its full range that it was designed with in a passive manner, where we do not have anything that's being tested other than the flexibility and quality of the soft tissues that surround that joint. So this is the combination of, when we look at what mobility is, it's our range of motion plus our flexibility plus our strength and stability. So this is range of motion and flexibility being assessed in that passive manner overall. The second variety of stretching through range of motion, is active range of motion. So our active range of motion now combines the range of motion with the overall control of strength and stability through that range of motion. So now we're looking at, how far can I take that joint into its end ranges, or into its deepest ranges, with the strength and stability of the musculature that surrounds it, and with the neuromotor patterning and control through the end range of the joint. So with the elbow, can I bend the elbow deep into flexion using my biceps to pull that elbow into flexion, and how far can I do that? Versus passively pushing the hand to the shoulder and getting a deeper range of motion there. Now, ultimately, the important thing here is, again, we've combined range of motion with our flexibility of the soft tissues Okay, now we've got range of motion with the motor patterning and control, strength and stability. That is going to make up our total mobility when we combine those two together. So our ultimate goal is to narrow the gap between our passive range of motion, which is again being forced into that end range, that depth, and our active range of motion. So if you could imagine those two being a canyon, two separate pieces, we want to actually narrow the distance between the degrees of motion that are capable from our active to our passive. Will our active ever be as good as our passive? No, it will not, because we end up running into things like soft endpoints, the tissues that are in between. We can compress those tissues when we're doing passive work, but when we're doing active work, generally we do not have the strength, or the actual physics is not right to pull or control that joint into its fullest depth. So those soft endpoints become our limiting factor, and we have a range of motion that gets a little bit shortened in that active range versus that passive range. And the overall importance, the last piece, why does it matter what range of motion we have, what overall, if we have passive or active range of motion, is the fact that our range of motion is a huge key, as you can see when it's combined with the flexibility and stability and strength in our overall mobility. So if you want mobility, you have to have all three of those functioning components working together, overlapping and interlacing one another, just as we described here, and that will optimize your mobility in the long run. All right, and there you have it. A quick overview of what is range of motion, what are the types of range of motion, and why does this range of motion matter in the very first place? How does it all work together? And if you like this video, make sure you let me know by clicking a big thumbs up down below. Take a moment to share this one with a friend who's been working on stretching, trying to improve their flexibility, trying to improve their range of motion through different movements. This will help them to truly understand, so pass it along their way. And if you are a dad who's been looking at improving your mobility and you'd like to do it in the next 12 weeks, or you're struggling with training injuries, aches, or stiffness, then what I need you to do is drop down below in the description here and fill out the coaching application. We'll get you headed in the right direction so that you can be moving freely without any pains or injuries or things like that in deeper ranges of motion that you never had before in 12 weeks time. So if that's you, fill out that coaching application and we will go ahead and get you headed in the right direction. Last but not least, if you have not already, take a moment and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future content like this. Every Thursday, I'm putting out videos showing you how to resolve aches and pains, prevent injuries, and overall optimize your performance inside the gym and outside of it in your daily life and routine, and it does not get better than that. Welcome to the Stronghold Army. I'll see you next week.